Hi everyone, this is another evidence release episode for you to support our new 3-part docu-series Israel Keyes' Life in Full Detail. To watch the full series, subscribe to Crime Culture Media at crimecult.com. When we started Crime Culture Media, one thing that was really important to us was transparency, and I know that there's a lot of interest in this case, and I know a lot of people feel like they haven't been able to see actual evidence of it. It's kind of a peculiar situation, and we really want to share with you. So like all the evidence release videos, I'm just going to do a quick introduction and then play all of it for you in full. This is a release from the Essex Police Department as part of the Currier case. Serial killer Israel Keyes killed Bill and Lorraine Currier in the summer of 2011. The Essex Police Department put forth so much effort to figure out who did this, to solve this case, and it ran cold. It wasn't until the Anchorage Police Department called them and said, "We got a guy over here who's confessed to murdering Bill and Lorraine Currier." And in this interview with Bill Currier's family members, we really see the widespread impact and the pain that serial killers cause. Over this interview, I'll be playing footage from the Essex Police Department of Bill and Lorraine Currier's home. So the audio and the video don't line up, but like many of the interviews with this case, there is no footage, there's only audio. So I thought it would be a lot more interesting to look at other evidence while listening to the interview. So here is the full interview.
Say that we love parents and that no matter what has happened, we can get through this together. Just so that they know that if they contact anyone else with help, no matter what happens.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, our first concern now is with everyone's safety and finding where they're at. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, you're mature, intelligent people. You know that we're suspecting that there could be some kind of foul play either.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and we don't know in which direction. Whether it's from Bill to Lorraine, Lorraine to Bill, or neither of them.
Yeah,
you know,
you don't know.
No.
Well, believe me, we considered all of those scenarios that you...
Well, sure. So the big thing is, I'm going to ask some questions, but if that's okay, I got to take order, so if I miss something on my notes. And if you're starting to feel like you need your food or whatever.
Yeah, I've got a nutrition bar here for rest.
Okay, so I want to make sure, because I can get to rambling and talking and lose track of time myself. So I've got your contact information. Do you live in Florida all the time? Or?
About 9 months out of the year. We just come up for like June, July, and August, and we spend it at Diana's. I can give you our Florida address and phone number too if it would be useful to you.
Okay, and Maryland and Jordan Shore.
How long have you been with the department?
Yeah. 10 years. Almost 11 now.
Yep.
Doing plain clothes for about 7 now.
Yep.
A little of everything, you know. You know, we don't get a lot of missing persons that become real whodunits or what happened, you know, kind of thing. You know, quite often things just resolve very quickly. And,
Right.
you know, whatever, you know, we find people, you know, it's usually somebody just didn't call somebody or whatever it is, but, you know, it's a little different.
They are so predictable.
Yeah. Well, let's just chat maybe a little bit about, you know, so Bill is your son, right?
Yes. George is his stepdad. We've been married for 31 years, so he considers him dad.
Yeah. Yeah. Fairly close with them.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
How do you contact? You know, how do you talk to them?
Bill and I, and sometimes George if he's up, talk on the phone when we're in Florida. Could be every 2 weeks, could be once a month, but, you know, sort of like that. Occasional email, but I don't think I've had an email from Bill for several months now. We usually talk.
Okay.
George usually goes to bed rather early, but if he's still awake, then I'll, get to go over to him and chat with him too,
Right. So you wouldn't be, how long have you been kind of snowbirds, I guess, for a long time? I guess,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. We started going for increasing amounts of time way back in 88,
Sure.
and then basically since, 98, we've been,
Yeah, I guess so.
yeah.
Oh, you've been back in town again? You told me I know.
Just got here 2 weeks ago yesterday.
Yeah.
We stopped and saw them on, a week ago Sunday.
We had a graduation celebration for Diana's son Alex, and Bill and Lorraine hadn't come. But it was because they were having issues with water in their cellar, and they were having to vacuum up the water with the wet bag really often to keep it from damaging their, furnace and equipment. So we stopped in the next day.
And so both seemed to be okay, and
Good.
we stayed for an hour and a half, I guess.
They were making brunch, and Lorraine seemed very cheerier than she had been for a while.
What wasn't she before?
Well, it seems, and I think other people in the family will tell you this, losing her brother Ronald was really hard on Lorraine. And she had seemed quieter, more withdrawn since Ronald died. It was very quick.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah, they were very
What
close.
was the last name?
Had to ask Arnold.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Ronald had a very serious problem with alcohol, and Lorraine and Bill took him in many times and tried their best to look after him. He sort of lived around in the whiskey, I guess, and whether Lorraine, she never expressed this, but whether she felt like if she had done more, whatever, that they were very good to Ronald and tried really hard to help him out. She has a wonderful close family, and we do too, and our two families are close.
How you done? How did he die?
He just, it was alcoholism. I believe.
I think
It
so.
wasn't a violent accident or anything. He
No.
was just found dead.
Where was this? Yeah.
I think
I think
it
it
was,
was, yeah, I think so.
Bill and Lorraine lived for, 14 years in a little bitty apartment in Whiskey before they bought their house.
So long have they been here, Nancy?
Has it been 5 years, 6 years?
Yeah, I would say 7, but 5 to 7, 5 to 8.
Yeah, they were just so proud. Lorraine's family never owned a home. They always rented in the Whiskey, so having a home that was her own, I think, really meant a lot to her in origin to Bill.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
On a daily basis, you probably don't, know a lot of their daily routines, but we're trying to get down to routines and things like that. How do you find out about them being missing?
Diana called, she called, around 3:30 or 4 in the afternoon.
Yeah, just the afternoon.
We were at her house when she called, and she hadn't called us earlier in the day because she was being protective, and she was hoping the thing was going to get resolved before she had to call and give us that news.
What she tell you, just...
She said there's no easy way to tell you this, but Bill and Lorraine made a mistake. And what do you mean they're missing, And then she just sort of went through the day and her concerns, engendered by Lorraine not showing up at work because they both worked in the same building. And Lorraine's supervisor had called Diana because it was Lorraine never, in all the years that she worked there, had not shown up for work without calling. And the same thing was true of Bill.
I thought Diana might have been Ryan's supervisor.
No,
His co-worker.
no, they worked for Fletcher Allen, but they worked in separate areas. But Diana is a supervisor.
Right. So where have you been? Just basically at Diana's house?
Yeah, running into town to do some errands or, stop and see somebody or something.
Right.
George's health is quite fragile, so our trips are usually fairly short, we'll come in for a couple of hours.
And she lived in Milton, right?
Grand Isle.
Grand Isle, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Diane is the other family.
Diane, there you go.
Yeah.
Up above the flooded out state park.
I know. I went by Sandbar a couple weeks ago, and it's like it was underwater.
It's all yeah.
Our family has had, tragedies, trauma, whatever in the past. We lost our oldest daughter, who would have been Bill's oldest sister, to a brain tumor in 1998. She was like a self-defense. She was just a week before her 42nd birthday. Danielle is her daughter, a young 2.5
When you say that was 98?
98, yeah. And prior to that,
What was her name?
Cynthia. And we also have lost my youngest son in 1975, who would have been Bill's little brother. And Bill would have been 14 at the time. He was 5.5 years old, and he had been ill for 4 years with an illness that apparently was some kind of a brain, I don't know if it was a virus. They did an extensive autopsy. I worked in the pathology department, and we never were able to determine exactly put a name on it. But
sometimes, they can just determine what something isn't.
Yeah.
But not so much, what it is.
He had terrible issues, and Bill and Diana were the ones that were the only ones at home. My then husband died that same year in 1975. He died in April, and the little boy died in October.
So Bill lost his father and his little brother.
Right, and he was very, very close with his little brother. The little brother had, I need to explain the situation to you so you can perhaps understand its effect on Bill. Many issues. He would lose muscle tone and just collapse in a heap. His temperature would fall way below normal, and he would be like comatose, and then his temperature would go really high, and we'd have to get him in a cold water bath to start it in the other direction. He had a rectal prolapse. He just had many things. Some days he could walk, some days he couldn't.
That's 5.5 years of age.
Yeah, and even during his sickness, but of course before he became ill, he used to stand at the window and watch the school bus to come for Bill. And Bill would roll around on the floor with him, and I can still picture his gentle hands with that little boy and everything. He was very, very close to him, and he was very close to Cindy.
Bill joined the Army himself?
He did. He got out of school early. Bill struggled in high school. He got voted out of high school, suspended for several days, several times for smoking pot. One time, I picked him up from school, and that morning I had noticed that there was a $10 bill missing from my purse. And as soon as I got him in the car, I confronted him about it, and he didn't deny taking it.
Right.
And I was very angry, and we got to the top of the hill in Colchester, and I pretty much cried. I said, you know, I can't live in a house with somebody that I can't trust.
Right.
And I said, maybe you need to go to Spectrum. You know, maybe that's a place you'd like to live. But you can't live in my house if I can't trust you. And, of course, I went home and cried like a baby, cried all evening, and at 8 o'clock he showed up at the door. But he knocked. And he said, Mom, I said, we need to talk. You know, he came in and he apologized. And I was so glad to see him. I would have just been
Sure. But you know you needed to do it, though.
Oh.
You know you needed to do it.
Oh, I knew I needed to do it, you know.
He obviously took you seriously.
He did. Yes, he did.
You don't always these days.
Yeah.
They don't always.
It's when we lived up on the Rolling Irish Road in Westford. And he walked from there home, or from Colchester up there.
It's a good home.
Yeah.
And, you know, in that whole time period, of course, his stepfather had died. I was married to Bill's father at a very young age. Bill was the youngest of our 4 children. I divorced him after 7 years because he was an incurable woman chaser, and I wasn't bringing my family up in a house where they might go to school and hear other children talking about what their parents were saying about their father.
So this individual, this fellow was with you after Bill's dad died, and you...
Right. Bill's dad didn't die. Bill's dad was the first man to whom I was married. Andrew Currier was his name, and he has since died. But I left him when...
I thought you said Bill's father died in 1970.
Well, he was actually his stepfather. I should have misled you.
Okay.
Anyway,
He was the woman chaser.
the first, Bill's father, was the woman chaser. I left him when Bill was 1.5 years old, and the children and I moved from our then home in Richmond back to South Burlington. And for the next 7 years, the children and I lived on our own. And then I remarried, and we lived in Colchester, and that was in 1970. And then his stepfather died very abruptly of a blood clot to his leg.
75.
Yeah, he had had surgery for the blood clot, was in the hospital and expected to come home the next day, and a blood clot got to his lung, and they actually called me at 5 o'clock in the morning on Bill's birthday to say that he had died. And then it was just Diana and I and Bill who were at home because the 2 older girls were going to college and they were living in town because we didn't have a car for them to go back and forth, so they had an apartment in town. And then George and I met sometime after that, and we married in 1980. So Bill and I were the last ones at home and living in Colchester, and then moved up to Westford, you know, with George. So Bill was disrupted from his school, and I mean, he went to the same school, but he didn't live in the same neighborhood. And of course had lost a father figure, had lost his little brother, his 2 older sisters. Well, his 3 sisters were all gone off to school, so it was just Bill and I.
Yeah, those are some difficult times for him. How old would he have been in 1975?
14.
14, as a teenager.
Yeah, and you could not get Bill to open up, you know. I knew how important it was that he talked about his feelings, but a school counselor proclaimed him unreachable, which I thought was a greater comment on the counselor than it was on him.
Hello? I gotta call you back in an interview. Thanks. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
It's the commandante there. No, Brad LaRose. He's been here a long time, I'm not sure if he...
I don't know, Brad. I haven't been around Essex Junction for quite a while.
Well, he just took over from Leo not too long ago.
Yeah.
Well, Leo was never going to leave, you know, I mean, he'd been here 40 odd
I
years.
dropped Leo a note.
Did ya?
I heard my daughter had said that Leo's going to retire.
Oh, so he did.
I dropped him.
I believe it, but he did.
He sent you such a nice note back, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a wicked nice guy.
Oh, Leo, top shelf.
Yeah.
Top shelf.
Just a wicked nice guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
As far as just going on from there to sort of fill in all the gaps here, George and Bill were not very close in the beginning. There was nothing confrontational or anything, but Bill didn't really know George. George didn't really know Bill
by then.
well.
Bill would have been, late teens?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I used to get frustrated with the two of them because Bill or George would say something to me about Bill, like, he could get out there and mow some of the lawn or something, and Bill would say something, and I would just say to the two of them, talk to each other. I'm not the interpreter here.
Yeah, sure.
But I don't think that their relationship was any different than it is in any family with a teenage
Sure.
You know.
Right.
And then, as years went on, of course, they got closer and closer, and he loves George to pieces, and George feels the same way about Bill.
Yeah.
Because George never had a son either. But 2 daughters that he loved very much, but never had a son.
Well, if you can't shed too much light on things like their normal daily habits, I mean, I know Bill doesn't drive,
No.
right? Now, I know he's, what's your understanding of that? He's got a neck problem or something? Or some other thing?
Bill has a very, very serious form of arthritis called ankylosing spondylitis. My father had that, and it is a disease in which there's a genetic component, so that's likely the case.
What's the worst case scenario? What does it do? Make you kind of uncomfortable, or?
Spine gradually fuses over time. By the time my father died, if he were, for instance, to lay on this table, he would have been in good shape.
Right.
And my father had one knee that he couldn't bend, and his neck was totally rigid. He could not turn his neck at all.
It's very painful, I would imagine.
Yes, and my father had psoriasis too, which is a part of the whole immune thing that goes along with a lot of arthritis.
He drove tractor trailer.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Bill suffered from this, and does it progressively get really bad, or?
Yeah, and I'm sure that his physician could fill everybody in on this, but, it's something that comes and goes and comes and goes, and they'll try him on one kind of medication like Enbrel or Celebrex, and he'll take that for a while, and then they stop it because, of course, there are side effects, and periodically prednisone, and just a lot of different things. And because of all those medications, I don't know totally the medications that Bill takes, but he has had in the past problems with stomach bleeding, ulceration and things from the drugs that he needs to take. And Bill's also diabetic, takes not insulin but pills to control it.
Right. How serious is that?
Well, still controllable with pills and diet and everything at this point. But I'm really concerned about his not having the side effects medication.
And we're pretty comfortable that he doesn't have any. I mean, that what he would use.
All his pills appeared to be in the house, according to Diana. And he had prepared he used a little shot glass where he put all of his pills out ready for the morning, and that was sitting there with all the pills in it that hadn't been used.
So, what would those be? Does he take his pills in the morning or night or both?
I don't know what the regimen is.
But what he would set up for the next...
Would be for the morning.
Oh, so
yeah.
his morning pills, which he'd set up at night, I guess?
Right.
That he would, for when he wakes up.
Exactly.
Those were all there?
Yes. And I think the other thing that people need to understand is really critical about timing is their birds were not uncovered.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about those birds.
Okay.
Yeah. So his morning pills were left in their shot glasses?
Yeah.
Now, who found that, Diana?
She noticed it. I don't know if she was the first one to notice it, but she noticed that they were there. And his work clothes were laid out, his wallet in the pocket, his work keys all there all together, you know, like he would do.
And would you do that the night before, though?
Right.
Or you do that?
No, you do that the night before.
Laid out where on the bed?
Right.
Strange, John, it's strange, you know?
Bill and Lorraine didn't always sleep in the same bed,
Right.
in the same room.
Because we found the shorts with the wallet and everything in the bed.
Right.
But
And
that would be left on that bed
where he
for
was,
this.
yeah, for the next day.
So he'd sleep in that bed and just leave those there for the next day, like right on the bed while
Right, and many nights Bill slept in the recliner with pillows under his arms and things because of the pain from his arthritis.
It's interesting that so you're saying that he would actually leave his clothes in the same bed he's sleeping.
Well, you know, maybe not,
Right.
Maybe he was going to sleep in the same bed where Lorraine was, but he left his clothes on the other bed. That's where we would get ready.
Right. And it was all laid out for the next day.
Yeah, Bill and Lorraine were both dedicated
Mm-hmm.
work people, extremely dedicated, and he would be ready to go to work in the morning, you can be sure of that.
So he laid out all the night before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess everybody at both their work tell you that they were some dedicated people.
How are you making out right now? You all right?
I'm all right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm okay. I'm missing the coming around.
Yeah.
Don't have a TV in here.
No.
I miss the Young and the Restless, you know.
Sorry. I'm sure they'll show you the recap at the beginning of the next
My mother
episode.
used to say, why don't they have a show called The Old and the Useless?
Right. So what would he normally wear? I mean, those were shorts, were his work clothes, or?
Yeah. Bill always wore, like, loose type clothing, like elastic waisted pants, because Bill was pretty sizable. But whether they were sweatpants or shorts, it was always that type of thing. And t-shirts, you wouldn't see him in like a button-down shirt or a pair of, you know, regular like chinos or something, or jeans. He never wore jeans or chinos.
He wore shorts a lot?
Mhm.
So I think he wore shorts on that, and
Yeah.
while it was in shorts.
Yeah, he wore shorts.
Might have been like a polo shirt, maybe. Would that be something you'd have to wear to work? Like, I think it was like a short sleeve type.
Yeah, it would be a short sleeve shirt, but it would more likely be a t-shirt than a polo. It would be more typical.
Yeah. What kind of work? What about shoes? Did you have like shoes you specifically were in? Runners, sandals?
He had quite a few pairs of sandal type shoes and sneaker type shoes, but not Oxford types or anything like that.
But no particular pair you would always wear or anything like that, or any particular,
Not to my knowledge.
you know, like I'm always wearing these or a pair of running shoes, you know?
Yeah.
I don't have you know, a bunch of other pairs, and when they wear out, I buy another pair.
Yeah, I
You know?
can't say, you know, but I always saw him in sandals or sneakers.
Yeah.
Did he wear, you know, like a watch or anything like that, or a particular jewelry, anything specific that he would always have, or?
See,
Boy, I can't remember.
it seems to me that he had a chain that he wore, a neck chain that he wore, but I can't tell you
No.
specifically.
He didn't drive.
No, Bill had stopped driving. He got a DUI back when he was younger. I can't remember when it was. It was when we lived in the big house, right? Yeah.
22, 23 years ago.
Yeah. And I never really understood why he didn't.
Get reinstated almost.
Right. I always assumed, and I'm trying to think if there's any basis in what Bill said, but that he didn't trust himself if he got his license back.
Why did he drink? Does he still drink a lot?
He drinks. I can't tell you in great detail how much he drinks, but like, you know, when we would get together as a family, Bill would be having a beer, or he might be having a rum and coke, or, you know, 2 or 3, and sometimes when he has called me, like on a Friday evening when we've been in Florida, I thought to myself, well, Bill has had something to drink. I mean, he wouldn't be slobbery, you know, drunk, but he and Lorraine both, Lorraine, I don't think ever drank anything much but beer, but I would say that they both drank alcohol on a daily basis after work. They didn't, either one of them drink to the extent that it kept them from either taking care of their household or going to work at their jobs, you know. But the other reason, of course, as time went on, that Bill didn't drive is because it's very difficult for him to get into a car. He can't turn his head, so he's not really able to drive any longer. I assume in an emergency he could. She has been the driver. But Lorraine hated to drive at night, and from what I understand, both pairs of her glasses and her contacts were in the house, still are in the house. And I can't even imagine her going out to get in the car and drive somewhere without some kind of, you know, visual assistance.
It's real crazy that the birds were covered and their bills closed out. And, of course, don't have a close, but they might have left that garage with the car.
Well, that's it. Let's talk about those birds. I mean,
The birds are their children. We call them our grandbirds.
yeah.
They both were extremely dedicated to the birds.
Oh, God, yes.
They would get home from work and they would bring the birds' cages, either bring the birds' cages out in the living room or let the birds out, and the birds would come out, you know, in the living room, and they made a big fuss over them. And
Take them out on the deck.
yeah, they'd take their cages out on the deck, you know. And Bill was always talking to the birds, and Lorraine too.
Yep.
They had one that would follow Bill around and walk right around behind him. But
You know when they would, what time of day they would, you know, I don't know anything about birds, you know, what time of day would they put the covers on the bird cage? I know that's to let them sleep, right?
yeah, right. You put the covers on the birds' cages at night when you're ready for them to quiet down. Believe me, we know because we babysat the birds once. And if they're not covered, you're not going to sleep.
Right, so when did, you know, Bill and Lorraine, when did they do that? You know, just sometime after supper, or, you know, right before bed, or?
See, I don't know the answer to that. And that's the other thing, you know, I think that both of them, I believe, went to bed fairly early, but I think that Bill might have been up and down in the night. Only from, things I've heard them say over a period of time, and if he was up, he would be in his room, the room where the birds were. Sort of Bill had all his music equipment and his computer and all that sort of thing, so that was sort of his hangout,
So they go to bed early. What time do they usually go to bed,
I can't give you a time, I wish I could, but, it wouldn't be unusual if I was talking to Bill, at maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, that Lorraine had gone to bed. They got up early, so they went, they usually went to bed fairly early.
What time did you say? Maybe Lorraine, 7:30?
7:30, 8 o'clock, she might be in bed, though.
I do that.
Well,
I would if I could.
they both, they both got up really early.
What time did they get up to?
They were, I think they got up around, 5:30?
No, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah,
5:30.
Diana might have, even better insight on that, but I know Lorraine would drop Bill off at work early and go on to work herself.
Did she pick them up, or did you
Yeah, most of the time she picked him up, yeah. Once in a while, if she wasn't able to pick him up for any reason, he might take the bus home, but that was unusual. Bill did a lot of the cooking in their house. Lorraine was sort of the sous chef. Bill liked to cook. He was our griller.
He was a good cook.
Yeah.
He was a good cook, I'd say.
I'm sorry, what did you just say?
He just said he is a good
He's
cook.
a good cook.
He was a good cook.
Yeah.
Good griller, hamburgers, hot dogs, all that stuff.
Really good summer food. Well, so they seem to be like homebodies, huh?
They were real homebodies. I don't believe they hardly ever did anything that wasn't, socializing that wasn't with family.
No.
Traveling or just back,
No,
their house people coming to see them or them going?
Oh, both. Both, yeah. Lorraine's family has a camp up in Norton that was left to them by their grandmother, and she and, various ones of her sisters or her brother when he was alive would go up there, but Bill didn't often go because, number one, of the birds, and it wasn't at all unusual for Bill to be working on the weekend. But, we've had get-togethers at Diana's, and we've had get-togethers at Michelle's, the other sister who's in Spain, and they would come to those. And, of course, at our place, when we still had a place up here.
Right. Did he just not like it up at the camp, or did he just rather stay home look after the birds and stuff?
Well, he just needed to. Somebody had to, and like I say, a lot of times he worked on the weekend. If they needed somebody to work, Bill would be asked to volunteer to do that because, of course, the money was good if he worked on the weekend.
So you overtime?
Yeah.
What did he do? I mean, it's something with UVM and the animals.
Well, actually, his employer at this point is not UVM, and I can't tell you which animal company it is. I know Charles River was for a while, but anyway, UVM outsourced the whole animal care program, and originally they outsourced it to Charles River, and I don't remember who it is now, but he's been in the same job, but he's had different employers.
For animal care?
Animal care, yeah. There are many, many, many research animals at the university. There's mice and rats and guinea pigs and this and that. And what Bill has done for more than 20 years is take care of those animals, which means, you know, the rooms and the care is inspected by a national organization, and they have to be maintained to a specific standard. And it would be room cleaning, it would be cage cleaning, it would be feeding, it would be watering, it would be examining the animals for some particular thing that the researchers were looking for. It would be keeping records, all kinds of things like that.
Right, so it's not like a research, but it's, you know, you're doing a lot of stuff, and probably things like, you know, watching if the animals gain weight, lose weight, whatever.
Right, if they're losing hair, if they're looking ill, if they're not looking ill, reporting to the researchers.
Right.
You know, being sure that the standards of the governing organization are being met. It's traditionally a department in which there is a tremendous amount of turnover, because young people will take a job there to get in the university.
Right, and move on to something different.
Well, not only that, but of course, if you're a UVM employee for, there was a year when I was there, but if you're there for a year, then your tuition is free. So if they can get a job, they can get through tuition. But Bill, I believe I'm correct in saying that Bill is the longest term employee by a long shot at this point. He's sort of the grandfather of the animal care.
Well, I'm sure he is.
But he was very serious about the requirements of the job and you know, being absolutely sure that the standards were being met and that the animals were being treated the way they were supposed to.
So he's a animal lover?
Well, I guess you could say that.
He
just is if he undertakes something, he's
Good.
interested in doing it.
You know, you don't see that a lot these days, people that stick with a job for a long time and, and have a dedication to the job. You know?
Sure don't.
I worried when he came out of the service because, of course, he had only completed high school and he didn't seem to have any interest in having further education, and I worried about his future employment, but he got a job right off. He worked for the wire company.
Oh, out there on Industrial Avenue.
Yeah.
Building or something.
It wasn't Belden, I don't remember, but he worked for a couple of different...
and settled on this.
Yeah, and...
What do you do in the Army? You just enlist and be a grunt, or?
Well, it was, I'm wanting to put the two words ammunition and observation.
Yeah, something to do with ammunition.
But it was observation and, you know, telling... He was never in battle, but that was what he was being trained for.
So it was an Army...
Right, and he traveled all over, and he really enjoyed that aspect of it a lot. He was in Germany, and he was in Panama, and he was in Japan, and he was in Hawaii. And
He was lucky.
Yeah, but no war, so...
Yeah, George got to go to Limestone, Maine, and never got out of there in all his
From
service.
Geneva, New York, the coldest spot in the world. And Limestone was the coldest spot.
How long? I got the Arctic Circle. Yeah, it's chilly. So how long was he in the service?
This is his first hitch, yeah.
Basic 3-year hitch, I guess.
Yeah.
Good for him, no? Sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, actually, I intended to have you have that part of the story, too. George and I went to Florida for a week or 2 weeks when it was Bill's senior year. And when we came home, he had signed up for the service. And he had arranged at school for an early out. They gave him some exams to take and awarded him his graduation certificate.
So you go to Florida for some time off, and You come back, he's sunk off into an
Yeah, he's still there, but
Yeah.
this was in February that we went, and then in April is when he actually left.
So he didn't tell you first.
No. You know, it was upsetting to me at the time, but it was a really good move for Bill.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't do anybody any harm. Okay, let me go back to the birds for a second. I know sometime at night you put the cover on so the birds will quiet down so everybody can go sleep. Is it first thing in the morning as soon as they wake up they pull the cover off, or?
See, I feel certain that they would have the first thing in the morning to spend some time with the birds before they had to head off to work. Because, I mean, when they were, like, going up and down the hall to use the bathroom or go in the kitchen or anything, they would be yakking at the birds, you know, while they were doing that.
They surely wouldn't, leave the covers on during the daytime.
No.
So
And Diana observed that there was food and water in their cages, adequate food and water, but that there wasn't a lot, like they put more in because they expected to be gone. And I know...
So like not extra. So
yeah, no.
Yeah.
And everybody who knows them will tell you the same thing. They would not have gone off and left those birds in any kind of challenging situation willingly. They would not have.
No.
Neither one of them.
No.
Yeah, without uncovering them, giving them more food and water.
Yeah. Or calling somebody and saying, we have to go, you know, look after the birds, even if they didn't say where they were going or why they were going. But they would not have left those birds uncared for.
Right. I understand that.
I think it's really important for me to tell you a couple of more things. I don't know whether they're important to you, but in my observation, and I'll certainly want George to weigh in on this, Bill and Lorraine's relationship was a compatible one. They were never harsh with one another. They frustrated one another. Bill, I know one thing that Bill did that frustrated Lorraine no end was that he bought lots of stuff on the internet. If it was a new movie, if it was a new electronic gadget, if it was, you know, some of those kinds of things, well, Bill had to have one. He was a toy boy, let's say.
Gadgets, movies.
Oh, yeah.
Styles.
Yeah. You know, I don't really know. Probably video games, I don't know.
Right.
But the things that will be seen, obviously, they probably get more movies than Blockbuster, you know. And
now, would this create an issue because just the time he's spending doing this, or is it too much of a financial hurt?
I think probably financial, and I don't have a good grasp on their finances at all. I know that, you know, after buying a house and everything, they lived in an apartment they rented for all those years for a ridiculously low amount, which is why they hadn't moved. But, you know, their expenses really mounted a lot, and I think that Lorraine worried more about finances than Bill did.
Yeah, I would think so.
And, you know, once they bought the house, well, Bill had to have the riding lawnmower, and he had the rubber cover for the floor in the garage, and all the shelving, and, you know, just had to have all that stuff.
Right.
Bill grew up, we didn't have a lot, we didn't have very much, especially when I was a single parent, and I think being able to have the toys was meaningful to him.
Right.
Yeah.
This seal of the garage was like a floor cover, or?
Oh, yeah, he has one of those rubber pad covers on the
Yeah.
garage floor. Nice and clean and nifty.
He kept everything clean and nifty, huh?
Oh, he did.
Oh, yeah.
So you were in the house, right?
We haven't
No.
seen him since they
No.
got him missing.
We go Sunday, we were in there, but not since.
Okay.
What's the story on the house now? As far as,
Access.
It's still ours.
Okay.
Um,
I know one of
State
the...
police is over there helping us out, and we did some checking last night. Basically, once we realized this isn't, there may be more to this than just people missing for a while, which was yesterday,
Yeah.
today.
yeah,
Then we start to treat it more, it's always serious, but there's different levels of legality, obviously.
Right.
Once we realize, hey, this may not just be people that have just taken off in a hurry, and we want to find them to make sure they're okay in case there's an accident where we think there may be more to it, we're not sure, then we have to start treating it, more seriously from a legal point of view. And,
Yeah.
then we have to write warrants to get into the house and to continue our search. And then we want to make sure nobody else can come in there and do anything to it. Not necessarily on purpose, just people knocking around.
Yeah.
And obviously we needed some people in there initially to figure out what was going on and, what's normal, what isn't normal,
Yeah.
For the place, and we have to do that, but at some point, obviously, we have to take over, and,
Oh, yeah.
so we were in there last night doing our thing, and we're in there again today. The state police is in there right now, as far as I understand, they should still be in there, and, they're helping us out with that, and, at some point, what will happen is when we're fully, completely done and sure, we'll release the house. But that may not be for, a few days. We will certainly not leave the birds held hostage in the house.
Yeah, well, one of the detectives had assured Diana that he had birds also, and he would be sure that they were looked at.
Right, I don't have birds. I've got dogs, cats, and horses, and a partridge in a pear tree. But certainly, I understand,
Yeah.
birds to me, are not my thing, but I understand they're their thing.
Right.
And obviously we wouldn't want the poor things to have too hard a time. And I know somebody managed to drop some food to them last night, I think.
Yeah.
Diana or somebody, I think.
I think Diana and Sally, before they were asked to leave the house,
They
had
threw
been
some food in.
punished.
Right. So
Where do you live, John?
I live way out, I'm in Johnson.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's a bit of a, sorry.
What? Are you from that area?
No, I'm a Canuck originally. I'm from Canada. I'm from north of the water. I moved south for the warm weather and I got as far as Omaha.
I had a guy move to Georgia one time. He said he's going south to get out of here, and I said, you stopped in the wrong place. You stopped in Atlanta. That's cold. Atlanta cold? He finally,
In the winter time, in winter and fall, it's cold.
We finally got it in Florida.
I don't know.
Let's keep on, so that we don't keep the others waiting.
Let's move on here. All right, so, you say you communicated mainly by phone. You had the house phone. Any cell phones? No.
They used to have cell phones, but they don't have cell phones any longer. I don't know exactly when they gave them up. I would say that they probably gave them up because financially it didn't make sense for what they were using them, but I don't know that that's...
So it's been a while.
Yeah. Not like this in the last week or so.
What, years or something? Or?
No, I would say maybe as much as a year ago or several months ago.
And then with the phone line cut, that's,
What do you know about the phone line?
other than what I've heard that it was cut.
Who found it? Or who realized it?
I guess it was,
I think it was Nick.
no.
No, I think it was
Oh, you
Nick that
think it was
came and
Nick?
told,
Oh,
his.
came in.
Because Nick and his friend were over there with his mom and everything, and
Who's his friend?
I
I don't know.
Nick is Sally's boy.
Right, and I was saying how the boys were, of course, Nick was very, very close with Bill and Lorraine, used to spent time with them when he was a little boy, and that he and his friend were, she called it playing detective, but, you know, she said they were just looking all around and, you know, just trying to cut out. Yeah. And I guess Diana had been complaining about, or had been saying repeatedly that the phone was not working. And then they tried to go on the computer to see if they could get some clues from that and realized that there was no internet connection. And that's when Nick and his friend, now this is all what I've been told, went out and looked, and the phone line was clean cut. And came back in and told Diane's husband, Dizzy, who was there. And then he went out and looked, and sure enough, it was.
What's Diane's husband?
We call him Dizzy.
That's what I thought you said.
Hotels, yeah.
That's Richard, though, right?
Yeah.
Right. How would they get on the computer, though? You know, do they have passwords or anything like that, or how do you?
Bill didn't have a password, but his clue, when Diana punched in that I'd forgotten my password, the clue was stepbro, and she instinctively knew that that was going to be the name that his little brother who died was called, which was Checker, and she was right.
Checker?
Yeah, that was his nickname. Don't ask me why, it just was.
So just Checker singular. So they just knew on the thing, I forgot my password, what's the clue?
Right.
It's your stepbro, and it's, so you punch in Checker.
So she punched in Checker.
And it didn't work, though.
And, no, it didn't work because there was no internet connection.
Was Lorraine a computer, I don't know, nerd for lack of a better term? Was she kind of into that stuff, or just?
As far as I know, she never used the computer except at work. I've heard her say, I've had enough of that stuff by the time I get home.
Yeah, I've heard her say that.
So pretty much it'd just be Bill's little,
Right.
his domain, I guess.
Right, within his room there, and Bill was a big music fan, had all kinds of music, and was nothing to walk in the house and you could hear Bill's music from the other end of the house there, and the birds chirping and Bill's music,
Right.
Lorraine watching the TV.
Right. Would they, so what do you know about what they have? They have, for things like communication stuff, they have the house phone, they have the computer, they have some emails. What about emails? Do you know what they have for that? Or?
No, I don't. I know what Bill's email address was that I used, which was BillCU.
Just BILLCU?
Yeah, 12 at yahoo.com.
You know his password or anything?
No, I don't.
Okay, any other email we're waiting? Or that's pretty much it?
I'm sure that he has a UVM one because everybody who works there has one, and it probably would be William.Currier at uvm.edu.
William?
Yeah, William.Currier
Yeah.
at uvm.edu. I know Bill's sister, Michelle, the one who's in Spain, also works at UVM, and that's hers.
Right. So basically, go to work, come home, he'd be on the computer or doing some yard work or in the pool. He liked the computer thing. Lorraine would watch some TV, go to the camp.
Yeah.
Socializing would be amongst family.
Yeah.
So they didn't go out to other places or, you know.
They once in a while went out to eat, but they didn't, like, I never heard of them going to parties that weren't family parties or anything. Never heard that from either them or anybody else.
So usually homebodies then?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Go shopping on Saturday, you know, like go to Costco, go to Home Depot, do all the things that homebodies do.
Costco?
Yeah, they were Costco shoppers. Home Depot and Lowe's were high on their list.
Right. How do they get, and getting back and forth to work, primarily she would take him to work, drop him off, pick him up?
Yeah.
Once in a blue moon, he'd take the bus, or?
Exactly. So,
So normally she would do it. So do you know what their work hours were, or just? early?
Diana could tell you, but they were early work hours. They both went to work early and got out like before 5. I know they would, you know.
Must have gone to work 7, huh?
Oh, I
Bill
think so.
before.
Bill before.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I dare say that I would have been able to reach one or the other of them at home like by 3:30 or 4 in the afternoon. I didn't often call them at that time, but once in a while Bill would call. They weren't confrontational with each other. It's like if one of them annoyed the other, their response was to ignore each other or make some, you know, smart alecky crack about it and you know, walk off in the other direction or something. Neither one of them was a confrontational person.
Right.
Lorraine, this is a concern to me. Lorraine I don't know how long it's been going on, but I know that she was very much into this whole extreme right-wing philosophy. You know, she was like one of Glenn Beck's biggest fans, and Rush Limbaugh and things like this.
Glenn Beck, Rush
yeah. And something, I think it was last summer when we were getting together at their house one time. I can't even remember the context of the conversation, but it was something political. And Lorraine spoke up, which was very unusual for her. And spoke very strongly about some right-wing positions, which I thought was sort of off the wall, you know, and I certainly didn't say that, and I didn't argue with her about it. But I thought to myself, wow, I felt so strongly about political issues, you know. And Diana had said that she would come to her at work and, like, whisper in her ear, like, there's a show on tonight about da-da-da, and it was some of this, you know, right-wing political issues that you really ought to watch. And I know that Bill did not agree, you know, with any of that, and I know that he, of course, used to pick on her about it, and I don't know how serious that issue was. But my concern is that I don't even remember when, but sometime several months ago, Bill told me, well, first he asked me if I knew where there was a shooting range around Burlington, and I said, gosh, no, I don't even know if there is one. I said, you know, why do you ask? And he said that Lorraine had gotten a revolver and wanted to learn how to use it. And I was sort of aghast, you know. I said, what does she need a gun for? And he said, she doesn't need a gun, it's just all that right-wing crap she's been listening to, was sort of his response.
She's got one now.
Yeah. And I certainly never mentioned it to Lorraine. I didn't even mention it to George.
Yesterday.
Yeah, that was the first he heard it. I didn't mention it to any of the other kids. Diana didn't know it. I just thought it was their business. It wasn't my business, and that's the way our family operates.
You never talked to her about it? Or?
No. I truly felt that, like, that was not any of my business, and I wasn't going to put Bill in a position of having betrayed a confidence.
Right.
But it was always a concern to me, because I feel very strongly that it's not safe for ordinary people to have guns in their house. But I never heard any more about it. And I understand that, I don't know who said, I don't know if Bill said, Lorraine said, who said, but I understand that her sisters are under the impression that Bill had gotten the gun for Lorraine to take with her when she went up to Norton. you know, when she was going to be off in the boonies by herself for, you know, protection. So I don't know which thing is true. I only know what happened as far as Bill's and my conversation.
But Bill gave you the impression that she got it because of
Yeah, like,
for
you know,
protection, or?
well, you know, there's this whole right-wing theory that the people need to be armed because the government's going to take over kind of thing, and,
Right.
you know, but she never discussed that whole business anymore with me or in my hearing, but as Diana, I'm sure, will share, she regularly was encouraging her to listen, and so I know it was very important to her.
And it seemed to like escalate or get worse, or just it was always something she had.
I just really don't know the answer to that.
When do you think she got the revolver, or he did, dear?
You said it was a few months ago.
Yeah, it was.
Were you in Florida?
Oh yeah, we weren't here. It was at least 6, 7, 8, at least that long ago.
Months ago?
Yeah, months.
Why would he ask you about that? Why would he think you would know about a gun range?
Oh, I don't know, just, Bill was asked to ask me almost anything.
Sure.
Yeah. Hadn't checked anywhere and just thought he'd ask.
I knew we lived around here forever, and we probably thought if there was something around here that he didn't know where it was, that we might, you know.
You know anything about the gun, just a revolver?
I have heard it get referred to by either somebody from the department or Diana or somebody as a, is there a Ruger?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it-
I have heard.
but I don't know.
No.
You don't know who it was?
No.
Okay. How about, you know, so you weren't in the house at all last time, I understand that.
Yeah.
You know a little bit about what you heard about the gun.
Mm-hmm.
You know what you about, you know, the phone line maybe getting cut, and you've heard that Nick may have found that, or actually physically went out and saw that. After everybody kind of realized the phone isn't working, the computer isn't working. How about how they would normally, you know, you say they travel by car, she would usually drive them, drop him off, go to work herself, and pick him up on the way home.
Right.
And they'd both be, you know, early to work, early back.
Yeah.
You're not sure exactly when, but somewhere around 7 to, you know, 3:30, 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
You know how they would go to work? Did they have like they seem to be people of routine, right?
Yeah.
They seem to like to stick with, you know.
I don't know whether they took, well, obviously you know they go down 15 by St. Mike's, but I don't know, and I think Diana will be very sure, whether they then took the interstate or went through Winooski. But she would be dropping
Well,
off.
she couldn't get on the interstate there. She couldn't get on the interstate at Winooski to drop them off.
Yes, she could.
No. No, she couldn't. There's no entrance.
You go down 15 and you go under the bridge and you turn left and you're on the interstate sweetie.
That goes south.
Well, that's where she would be going. To the main UVM campus.
That's where he'd work?
Where does he work?
The main UVM campus.
Okay.
Oh, I thought he doesn't work up on Main Street in Winooski?
Well, he does sometimes, you know, have to go up there and
Oh,
but
but
that's,
it's the van.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah.
I learned something.
So either you go on the interstate or
Or down through Winooski, you know, 6 to 1 happens better
Sure.
than the other to his right.
you don't know
at UVM.
specifically, right? Does she have like a parking spot herself or at work? Or?
Yeah, all of them who work for Fletcher Allen have a pass to that parking garage that's attached to their building. Diana could tell you exactly about that because she works there in the same building as her.
What is it, like a gate? You gotta
Right.
hit the little,
Punch a card in or something.
is it a garage or just a lot?
Oh, it's a garage. It's a multi-story.
All right. How about going to camp? How would they go up to camp?
As far as the route is concerned, what did she say? She used to go to up 15 and then go 100?
I think so. through Eden and Lowell.
Yeah, because I remember her talking about various eating places. Remember the conversations we had about going up through there? And I don't know, George, he's good with directions. He would probably know from there. When you go up 100, I can't remember what route you would get on to get over to West Charleston or over to Norton. We haven't been that way too long. We haven't gotten to.
Right.
But the girl.
Basically 15 to 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that her sister Diane.
Yeah,
would be very specific.
You know where they would stop, where food would be, these places, you can remember?
No, it's just that we would.
Yeah.
Okay. How about stuff in the house, would they, we talked about the birds, the computer would be kind of his thing, would they keep everything neat and tidy? I mean, it looks pretty neat and tidy.
Oh, yes, always.
So if there was any, you've obviously heard there was some broken glass.
Mm-hmm.
If that happened through some accident in the house, they wouldn't be leaving that lying around. They'd clean it right up.
No.
No, they were pretty meticulous as far as the house is concerned.
Right. How about, when they eat, they pretty much cooked, right? You said Bill was the chef.
Right.
So, meals would be in the house cooked, not like takeout or going out a lot.
No, they didn't go out a lot. I think, once in a while they picked up pizza and things like that, but it would be more apt that Bill would say, cook a casserole or something, and then he'd have that to take to lunch for 2 or 3 days. But
right.
They always seem to have quite a bit of food in the house. They shop in quantity, more like Costco and stuff.
Would they clean up all the time?
As far as their dishes?
Yeah, or would they leave the stuff down,
I don't believe they ever did.
They did what?
Did leave dishes.
No.
I mean, when we had family gatherings there, you never walked in there and found dirty dishes in the sink or on the stove or anything that was unkempt.
Yeah, how some people, they just kind of pile it up for a while and then clean it after.
Yeah, no.
They kind of eat the meal, clean up?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright. I think if there's anything I'm missing here.
That glass that was broke in the door, as I remember, there's 2 pins of it.
With a wooden strip in between.
And was there any indication of how that was broken? Or
Lab,
something thrown in?
yeah, lab's looking at that right now. Sometimes it's hard to tell what breaks causes a break,
Yeah.
But that's being looked at right now.
Yeah.
That's among the other things we're looking at.
That was one of my questions tonight.
Well, when they, speaking of stuff like that, how do they, knowing them, and first-hand knowledge or just knowing them? How do they, you come home, they park the car in the garage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Inside, they wouldn't leave it out in the driveway.
Only if they plan to use the garage space for something, if Bill was going to be doing some project in there or something, it might be out front, but usually in the garage.
Okay. Would they close the garage door, or would they just leave it open and not worry about it?
I think if they were, if they were working around the yard, it would be open, but if they were not planning to be out in the yard, then they
Yeah, he had a shed in the back where he kept his tractor and that sort of stuff, right? So he could put the car in and, yeah, I would think most of the time.
Yeah, so it's not like to just leave the door or garage.
No.
Okay. The garage door is mechanical, right? Do you remember if they had like
They have a clicker.
clicker for the car? Or?
I think so. Yeah, I think I'm sure they did.
What about leaving the house? How would they leave the house? Would they lock everything up? Were they really good about keeping everything locked up and secure? Or would they kind of just, whatever, they walk out the door?
I've never stopped there when they weren't there. Not that we have done that often, but I've never stopped there and found the door unlocked.
You don't think they leave it?
I don't think. No, I don't think.
just wondering if they're, at night, do they make sure everything's locked up and shut, or?
Yeah, that was,
I would
question, but
believe that they would. I would believe that Lorraine in particular would. And I don't know why I say Lorraine in particular, but I guess probably because in his growing up years and in the years that Bill was at home, it was during a time when we didn't really feel like we had to do that all the time.
Right.
So we were rather lax about it, but she grew up in the city in Winooski, and they probably locked up,
Yeah, Lorraine grew up in Winooski.
Yeah.
yeah, things are different than they used to be
Yeah.
10, 12 years ago. 25, 30.
Yeah, no kidding.
35.
What did she wear to work? Did she have to dress up? Or?
No, just, pants and tops kind of thing. Office casual, I guess you'd say.
Mm-hmm. And she did kind of administrative work, or?
She worked in billing.
She works in billing right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think she's always worked in billing since she started there.
So does she handle money, or just kind of do
Oh, no,
bills?
this is accounts.
You do the
Kind
accounts
of
and
thing,
bills?
yeah. Well, I say that very quickly, and I shouldn't say it so quickly. There again, that's a detail that Diana will have far more insight into, but it's
Her next year's head of checks to payments, not
Yeah.
accounts.
posting payments to accounts
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So yes, perhaps, maybe not cash, maybe checks. I don't know.
So she'd do, posting payments, so people would write checks to Fletcher Allen, she would deal with that.
Right.
I think that's what
Okay. Well, do you have any, what's your heart telling you? These are your family, for decades.
I can probably tell you a lot of things that have gone through our minds, and I can't tell you, whether we feel strongly about one or the other. Of course, we think about, did somebody come in there for some reason, and were they actually forced to leave the house? But I can't even imagine what worth having Bill and Lorraine in your possession would be to anybody when they didn't take anything of value that was there.
What is their value there? I mean, other than, some TV.
Right, that's what there
Do they keep
is.
a lot of cash in the house? Do they have a lot of jewelry? I mean, I know other than Bill's trinkets and stuff with his little toys and things.
Right, it's mostly electronics and that sort of thing that somebody could, pawn or sell for cash would be what there would be in there. There's nothing of significant value that I'm aware of. So, you wonder about that. I have learned since all this started up, that they both smoked pot, according to Diana, who of course knows, she's closer with them.
It sounds like you keep going back to Diana. Is she the one I got to talk? Is she the one who really kind of knows everything about?
Well, Diana is sort of, now that we don't live in the area anymore, she's sort of the hub.
Yeah.
It's like we always tell all the kids and the grandkids, if you need us, call on Diana. She knows where we are. And rather than call everybody, we tell everybody to call Diana. Well, everybody calls Diana,
Yeah, sure.
She's become the mom.
So they smoke a little weed, they use it,
Yeah, I didn't know that,
Right.
And of course you say to yourself, well, do they get in deep? And I asked Diana that question this morning. And she said, oh, no, Mom. She said they didn't smoke pot to that extent. And she said they didn't, she said, as far as I know, they use no other drug, or anything. She said they smoked a little pot and they had a beer, so that's her assessment.
Sure.
So there goes that. And,
yeah, nothing, that's not an uncommon thing for people of that age group.
None of us in our family can imagine either Bill or Lorraine being violent toward the other one. We can imagine them having a screaming match, You know, we've not seen it, but we can imagine that that could happen. We have laughed, as a matter of fact, about the fact if either one of them took the gun that we know about and pointed at the other one would say, "Oh, for God's sake," you know, sort of get over it kind of thing is the way we imagine it. I don't know that either one of them is despondent. One thing I could picture is if one of them was and was threatening to harm themselves, I could picture the other person getting in the car with them to try to dissuade them. You know, that I could imagine. If they were despondent, but they didn't appear despondent, either one of them. I can't imagine Lorraine or Bill, either one, being able to make the other one do something they didn't want to do forcibly. I can't imagine that.
No, I can't either.
I feel fairly certain that if Bill felt like he was scraping the bottom of the barrel, that he would have called me. Because we would have conversations about, you know, life in the past and his understanding of how things were and why they were the way they were, and then my, you know, sort of sharing family lore with him. So we had conversations at that level, and I feel like he felt really close enough to me that he would have shared that.
When did we last talk to Bill or Lorraine? Just the week Sunday?
Yeah.
And that was in person?
Yeah.
A visit?
Yeah.
And it was a good visit. And after that, did you talk on the phone or email or anything?
No, we hadn't, but that wasn't unusual,
Right.
you know. It was like, okay, here came the work week, you know, and so everybody's back on there.
And they just missed, why did they miss that family gathering? What was it, it was a graduation?
Yeah, it was Diana's oldest boy, Alex's graduation party. They had water in their cellar,
Oh, right.
and they were...
Isn't Alex in his 20s? Was that Alex Smith?
Yeah, graduated from college.
Oh, college.
Yeah. He graduated the 7th of May, but they waited to have the party till we got here. But he had a card in the mail from them that arrived at his house the very next day and said, you know, sorry we couldn't be there, blame it on the water, you know.
Right. So they wanted to go.
Right. They always seem to enjoy family get-togethers.
Are they close with Alex?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Bill and Lorraine have been close with all the kids when they were younger, you know. I think that it was kind of a heartache for Bill as the kids get older and into their teenage years and busy with jobs and boyfriends and girlfriends.
Sure, right.
They've not got to spend as much time with them. And I think early on he sort of took it personally, you know, like, they don't like me anymore. But then, you know, not having ever brought up, he didn't realize that that's what teenagers do.
Sure, they do their own thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Any, you know, I don't want to kind of flop back and forth here. Anything come to mind? I mean, somebody we should talk, obviously Diana and the family members. Any other friends or something where either one of them would go to or hang out with or might call and say, hey, I need some help, can you come help me with something? Anybody other than just the family that they would kind of socialize?
It would have been family.
Sorry?
It would have been family.
So they didn't have other friends?
No, they really didn't. Either one of them. I mean...
Or a place they go to hang out or anything other than, you know, going to, like, where would we look other than going to the camp in Norton?
God, if we knew that, you know.
We were talking about
So
that.
work home, visit the family, and when we say the family, basically the people that are here?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It's
No
just
other
the
family?
well, except for Ed and Michelle. You know, Michelle's the other sister that's in Spain. She's going to be home tomorrow.
And she's not there on vacation, she lives there.
No, she's there on vacation. It's her two daughters are the two younger ones. They live in South Burlington.
Okay. So other than these family members that are here, it would be work, home, the camp for her more than him, maybe?
Yeah.
As far as him going anywhere, We talked about that yesterday.
He doesn't.
We didn't have a clue where they'd even have in mind to go.
Now, if she wasn't around, or she was doing something, or she's at camp, you know, what's his, you know, is he just going to go walking down the street, or is he going to go catch a bus? And
To go to work, you mean?
well, he'd go to work by bus.
Right, but he wouldn't be going anywhere. The only thing he'd be doing is he'd be watching the football game, or he'd be watching the baseball game,
on the
he'd be listening to
computer,
his music,
right.
he'd be tending to the swimming pool, he'd be playing with the birds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wouldn't
Is he?
be.
Okay.
No.
Is he into, you know, anything else on the internet? Like some people are into all that Facebooking and, you know, all that stuff.
I don't think he does a lot of that.
No, it's more just his music and stuff like that.
I think Bill is a great information gatherer on the internet, because a lot of times when we would be talking, you know, we would be talking about maybe world issues or, you know, things like that, and he would be telling me about things that he had read, and obviously they had been read on the internet because he wasn't at the library, and, you know.
Right.
So I think he was a big information gatherer. He's got a curious mind and was always interested in whatever was going on.
But it wasn't like, you know, some of these people, I know it's not your thing per se, it's not mine either, but, you know, there's some of this different stuff when you do, you know, friends and Facebook and all these things where you're constantly, you know, communicating with other people on this stuff.
Yeah,
It's
no.
not really his thing.
I think,
Just kind of a research tool, or?
yeah, I think that, I don't know, but Diana has, you know, looked at his Facebook or gone on his Facebook, and I think it says something like 6 friends, and I guarantee you that all 6 of them will be family members. He was quite close, and I think still is, with Sally's ex-husband, Jeff. I mean, Sally and Jeff were married forever and real close with Bill and Lorraine.
Yeah, they were.
Is he here?
Yes,
Yeah.
he's here. I would, outside of family, I think I would characterize Jeff as being closest to Bill, wouldn't you?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And Sally as being closest to Lorraine.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. How are you making out? I don't want to keep you any more tonight.
All right.
You ready for
We wanted to, whatever.
It's getting late. I mean, I don't want to.
Yeah, well, I think I would recognize if he needed a rescue here.
Well, I'm just wondering if we're about there right now. You know, if there's anything
Yeah.
else. Like you say, you know what we're looking for. Anything to kind of get an idea of where to look, or who to see, or who to talk to, or you know. I mean, this is.
I have this feeling that whatever has happened, I mean, it has happened like between the 2 of them, that if somebody could reassure them that no matter what, and I'm very serious, no matter what, if one of them killed the other, we love them both dearly, and we'll get through this together.
No.
I just want them to know that it's safe to come to your family, to see you through this, whatever it is.
Now, do you think there's I know this is tough. I mean, is there a part of you who thinks, yeah, that could have happened?
I don't know. But no, you know, really, I don't feel that way.
Okay.
I guess I don't. It would be really far-fetched.
Well, it's like in my job, I regularly, you know, come into contact with people who's got loved ones, and they know, you know, my whatever has this problem, or a drug issue, or an alcohol issue, or this one's got anger management issues, you know, and they don't like to recognize certain things, but they do recognize that they know that deep down, maybe there's a chance.
Yeah, well,
Let me take this one for a second. Hey, Lance, you all set? What's up? I'm good. I'm just finishing up with Marilyn and George. Negative. Yeah, let me finish up here and then I'll come up. Are you upstairs? Okay.
yeah, I can't imagine either one of them doing something that would jeopardize their jobs, because their house is so important to them, their jobs, and,
Right.
you know, I can't imagine them voluntarily doing anything. But I'm also smart enough to know that parents don't know everything,
Right.
and that people will go a long way to keep things from their parents
Sure.
because they don't want their parents to be
Right,
disappointed
but
in
nothing
them.
is, you know, there's no, you know, I realize now that, you know, there's some issue or something like that. Nothing like that is really, you're just looking for possible,
Exactly.
you know,
There's nothing saying,
eating at you saying, oh boy, you know, I should have seen this, or this is what it probably is, and,
No.
you know, because quite often people recognize something like that. And
That's what's so frustrating, is that there is something like that.
Okay. All right, and so we're sure going to talk to everybody, and we're going to try just to see if somewhere amongst all this information there's something that we can use to help us to figure out. You know, I mean, if they don't have strangers, they don't do like online chatting and friends and meeting people online and stuff. Some people are into that, you know.
Yeah.
You meet people and they've got all these social networks
yeah.
and stuff. You know, so if they're not having people come into their house, I mean, do they have anybody that comes to visit other than family? I mean,
I don't think so.
They chit-chat over the fence and everything with their neighbors, but their neighbors don't go back and forth,
Right,
you know.
right.
It's not like that anymore. I'm sure that Bill's computer will show whether any of those...
if there's anything,
have
right,
any
any
relatives
activity
or
with
not.
other people. Okay.
Now, I guess I never either got an answer or asked the question specifically, but if we had an opportunity through the media to get that message to Bill and Lorraine, would that be harmful to you?
I'll have to give that a few minutes thought. I'll want to discuss that with the other investigators and our case officer. You know,
I fully appreciate you not wanting us to say anything else.
well, we just, it really puts us in a bad spot, because then if we get information coming back, like, I don't know how you personally feel about this whole thing with a clairvoyant or whatever it is, that Diane obviously feels strongly about, but, you know, my job is being paid to be suspicious of everything, and, you know, my first thought is somebody sees something in the news or hears something that, you know, somebody says something, you folks, one of you says something to a neighbor, they talk, and it gets around, and the next thing you know is we have no idea where the information came from.
Right.
So if somebody gives us information later, we have no idea how valid it is. Where did they hear it? If it's something that they know because they were there or they saw it,
I hear
you know what I mean? Or if it's just reiterating something.
Or if it just started out over here and it's all distorted, but it's only over there.
It makes it tough for us to do our job, you know.
We appreciate everything that
We do.
We're trying to.
I think everybody has certainly treated Diana, who was the main point person. They've been so good about keeping in touch and keeping us all.
We can. Unfortunately, you know, we can't always just give information that, you know, we need to find stuff out.
Yeah.
Well, we're still working on it.
Yeah.
So, very much. Turn this recorder off.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. My name is Victoria Evans. Be safe out there.